So today we're doing identification of ions and gases. The first question, the diagram shows a simple laboratory apparatus for the preparation and collection of a dry gas. What is the gas? Now the gas is being prepared by a reaction between a liquid or an aqueous solution and a solid reactant. It is being dried by anhydrous calcium chloride, and because it is being collected by upward delivery, so it has to be less dense than air. Carbon dioxide, chlorine, and hydrogen chloride are all denser than air. So they are collected by downward delivery. However, hydrogen is the only gas from these four that is less dense than air and is collected by upward delivery. Now, the reactants over here, most probably the liquid or the aqueous reactant will be an acid, and the solid reactant will be a metal. Metal plus acid produces a salt and hydrogen gas. And this hydrogen gas is dried by the anhydrous calcium chloride. So C is the correct option. Question 2. Substance X dissolves in water to form a colorless solution. This solution reacts with aqueous lead to nitrate in the presence of dilute nitric acid to give a yellow precipitate. For these type of questions, you'll need to learn the test of ions and gases. Over here, we'll be using the test of anions, that is iodide. When iodide ion reacts with lead nitrate or silver nitrate, lead iodide or silver iodide that is formed is a yellow precipitate. Over here, lead nitrate plus iodide will give us a yellow precipitate of lead iodide, and so that's why B or D cannot be the answers. C is also not the correct option because it is written that X dissolves in water to form a colorless solution. So iron 2 iodide would give us a colored solution because it's a transition element. That's why A is the correct option. Question 3. The diagrams show an experiment with aqueous ammonium chloride. A gas Y is produced and the litmus paper changes color. What are solution X and gas Y? A solution X is added to aqueous ammonium chloride, and this produces a gas. Now, there is a reaction of alkalis and ammonium salts. Alkali plus ammonium salt, that can be ammonium sulfate, ammonium chloride, ammonium nitrate, and so on. This produces a salt plus water plus ammonia gas. Therefore, solution X has to be an alkali. Over here, C and D cannot be the right options. And ammonia gas is produced. The characteristic of ammonia gas is that it is an alkaline gas, so it changes red litmus paper to blue. Therefore, A is the correct option. Question 4. A student tested a solution by adding aqueous sodium hydroxide. A precipitate was not seen because the reagent was added too quickly. What could not have been present in the solution? So what the question means over here is that in the test of cations, we have learned that if for some ions, if the sodium hydroxide is added in excess, that ion's hydroxide dissolves. So over here, we have to select that ion whose hydroxide does not dissolve. Aluminium's hydroxide dissolves to give a colorless solution. Zinc's hydroxide dissolves to give a colorless solution in excess sodium hydroxide, and ammonia's hydroxide produces ammonia gas on warming because of the alkali plus ammonium salt reaction. However, if calcium would have been there, calcium would have remained insoluble and a precipitate would have been seen. So calcium is not present in the solution and B is the correct option. Question 5. A solution of fertilizer was tested as shown. In the fertilizer, aqueous sodium hydroxide is being added and a green precipitate is formed. And when the mixture is warmed, a gas is produced that turns red liquid paper blue. There is only one gas which would turn red liquid paper blue, that is ammonia, because that is the only alkaline gas. So ammonia has to be produced, and green precipitates are of chromium 2 plus ion and Fe2 plus ion. So for the ammonia gas to be produced, there has to be ammonium ion, because ammonium ion when reacting with an alkali produces ammonia gas, and there has to be either iron ion or chromium ion. So in A, it cannot be the correct option. B again cannot be the correct option. D cannot be the correct option. But C has both ammonium ion and iron 2 plus ion. So C is the correct answer. Question 6. When dilute hydrochloric acid is added to a white powder, a gas is produced. The solution remaining is tested separately with small volumes of both aqueous ammonia and aqueous sodium hydroxide. A white precipitate is produced in both tests. What is the white powder? When acid reacts with a solid, that is a white powder. That has to be a carbonate, so that a gas is produced, which will be carbon dioxide gas. Now, after this reaction, the cation of the carbonate will remain in the solution, and this ion produces a white precipitate. If aluminum oxide or calcium oxide were there, then with hydrochloric acid, they would have reacted to form salt and water, so no gas would be produced. So those are not the correct options. Now with copper carbonate, on adding the reagents ammonia or sodium hydroxide, a blue precipitate is formed, whereas over here a white precipitate is formed. With zinc, a white precipitate is formed, therefore D is the correct option. Question 7. Which ion reacts with aqueous ammonia to give a precipitate that dissolves in an excess of ammonia? Aluminium forms a white precipitate but does not dissolve in excess. Iron 2 plus forms a green precipitate but does not dissolve in excess. Iron 3 plus forms a red brown precipitate but also does not dissolve in excess, while zinc 2 plus forms a white precipitate and dissolves in excess to give a colorless solution. So D is the correct option. Question 8. The scheme shows a sequence of reactions starting from compound Y. What could be compound Y? Compound Y, when reacts with nitric acid, produces a gas and a colorless solution. This colorless solution, on reaction with sodium hydroxide, produces a white precipitate which is insoluble in excess sodium hydroxide. White precipitates are formed by zinc and aluminum and calcium. Zinc and aluminum's hydroxides dissolve in excess sodium hydroxide, so these are not the precipitate form, but calcium's precipitate, which is white, remains insoluble, so the white precipitate formed is calcium 2 plus ion. It's calcium hydroxide. So this shows that this colorless solution contains the calcium 2 plus ion. Therefore, we can say that compound Y was a compound of calcium that, when reacted with nitric acid, produced a salt that contained calcium. So in the options, there's only one salt with calcium, that is calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate plus nitric acid would give us calcium nitrate plus carbon dioxide gas, that is the gas that was produced, and water. So B is the correct option. Question 9. A small amount of aqueous copper 2 sulfate is put into a test tube. A few drops of aqueous ammonia are added to the test tube. Then an excess of aqueous ammonia is added to the same test tube. What are the two observations? So this solution contains copper 2 plus ion with aqueous ammonia, few drops of aqueous ammonia. Copper 2 plus ion forms a light blue precipitate. And in excess aqueous ammonia, that precipitate dissolves to give a deep or dark blue solution. So A is the correct option. Question 10. An aqueous solution of zinc chloride is tested by adding reagents. Which observation is correct? Zinc chloride contains two ions. One is the Zn2 plus ion and the other is the chloride ion. Now for the chloride ion, there is one test, that is adding silver or lead nitrate. This forms a white precipitate. Whereas for zinc ion, there are two tests. One is adding sodium hydroxide and the other is adding aqueous ammonia. After a few drops, a white precipitate is formed and that precipitate dissolves in excess of the reagent. Now, A part says acidified aqueous barium nitrate forms a white precipitate. There is no such test for zinc chloride. The second one says aqueous ammonia forms a white precipitate soluble in excess of the reagent. This is correct. C, aqueous sodium hydroxide forms a white precipitate insoluble in excess. It is soluble, so this is wrong. And last one is powdered copper forms a gray precipitate. Copper is less reactive than zinc, so copper cannot displace zinc. Therefore, this is wrong. Therefore, B is the correct option. 11. The results of two tests on solution X are shown. Which ion is present in solution X? Now, adding sodium hydroxide to solution X gives a white precipitate which dissolves, while with ammonia, a white precipitate is formed that remains and does not dissolve. Copper cannot be the right answer because copper's precipitate is blue. Zinc's precipitate dissolves in both ammonia and sodium hydroxide. Calcium does not produce a precipitate in aqueous ammonia. Therefore, aluminum is the correct option. Okay. Question 12. Which row gives the correct tests to identify both ammonia and sulfur dioxide? For ammonia, as ammonia is an alkaline gas, it turns Question 12. Which row gives the correct tests to identify both ammonia and sulfur dioxide? Ammonia is the only alkaline gas, so ammonia would change the color of red litmus paper to blue. It will not affect blue litmus paper, so A and B are wrong. Sulfur dioxide gas, being a reducing agent, reduces potassium manganate and changes its color from purple to colorless. So therefore, option C is the correct option. Question 13. A substance dissolves in water to form a colorless solution. This solution reacts with aqueous silver nitrate in the presence of dilute nitric acid to give a yellow precipitate. Again, silver nitrate giving yellow precipitate is for an iodide ion because silver iodide is yellow. And because the solution has to be colorless, it has to be calcium chloride because it has to be calcium iodide because iron iodide would give a colored solution being a transition element. So A is the correct option. Question 14. After acidification with dilute nitric acid, a colorless solution of X reacts with aqueous silver nitrate to give a white precipitate. What could X be? Over here now the precipitate has to be white with silver nitrate. So silver chloride is white, has a white precipitate. Therefore, the anion has to be chloride ion. So A and C are wrong. And because the solution has to be colorless, so copper chloride cannot be the right answer because it would give a colored solution being a transition element, and sodium chloride is the correct option D. Question 15. Aqueous zinc chloride is tested with various reagents. Which observation is correct? Aqueous ammonia gives a white precipitate which is soluble in excess reagent. A is correct. B, copper turnings give a precipitate of zinc. This is wrong because copper is less reactive than zinc, so copper cannot displace zinc. It is acidified aqueous silver nitrate gives a yellow precipitate. This is wrong because silver chloride, which will be formed, is a white precipitate, not a yellow precipitate. With in D, acidified aqueous barium nitrate gives a white precipitate. This is again wrong because barium chloride and zinc nitrate both are soluble, so there will be no precipitate. So A is the correct option. Question 16. When aqueous sodium hydroxide is added to a solution, a white precipitate forms which dissolves when excess sodium hydroxide is added. So a white precipitate is formed for aluminum ion, calcium ion, and zinc ion. For calcium ion, the precipitate does not dissolve. For zinc and aluminum, the precipitate dissolves in excess sodium hydroxide. In the options, we have only aluminum ion, therefore A is the correct option. That's it for you.